Jimi Hendrix took Buddy Guy's guitar, played one song, and Buddy quietly stepped back because from that moment, the guitar no longer belonged to him. Chicago. 1967. A small club on the south side. The kind of place where the stage was barely raised off the floor, and the audience sat close enough to see the sweat on a musician's face. This wasn't a concert hall. This wasn't a festival. This was the kind of room where real musicians came to play for people who actually listened. Buddy Guy was headlining. He'd been playing the Chicago blues circuit for years by then, respected, admired, known among musicians as one of the most technically gifted guitarists alive. His hands could make a Stratocaster sing or scream, could bend notes in ways that made other players shake their heads in disbelief. Tonight's crowd was small. Maybe 60 people. Some locals who came every week. A few musicians sitting at the back tables, nursing drinks, watching with professional attention. And in the corner, wearing a jacket with fringe and sitting very still, was Jimi Hendrix. Buddy noticed him during the second song. Hard not to, Jimi had a presence even when he was trying to be invisible. Buddy didn't acknowledge him from the stage. That wasn't the protocol. You didn't call out other guitarists in the room. You just played, and if they wanted to join, they'd find their way up. After his set, Buddy came off stage sweating, his Stratocaster still in his hand. The small backstage area was just a hallway with a couple of chairs and an amp. Jimi was standing there, waiting. "That was beautiful, man," Jimi said quietly. His voice was soft, almost shy. "The way you bend those notes. I've been trying to get that sound." Buddy smiled. "You're doing all right yourself from what I hear. You heard me play?" "Everybody's heard you play." Buddy set his guitar against the wall and reached for a towel. "You're making noise in London. People talk." Jimi looked down at his hands. "It's different there. Freer, maybe. Here." He trailed off. Buddy understood. Here in America, especially in Chicago, there were rules. Hierarchies. Blues had a lineage, and you respected it. Jimi was young. Wild. Doing things with the guitar that made the old guard uncomfortable. "You want to sit in?" Buddy asked. Jimmy's head came up. "You mean it? I don't say things I don't mean." Buddy picked up his Stratocaster and held it out. "Use this. One song." "Show me what you got." Jimi hesitated. Not with uncertainty, with reverence. Buddy Guy's guitar was legendary among the musicians who knew. It wasn't just an instrument. It was an extension of one of the greatest living blues players. "You sure?" Jimi asked. Buddy placed the guitar in Jimmy's hands. "One song." Hendrix didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. They walked back onto the small stage together. The crowd murmured, people recognizing Jimi, wondering what was about to happen. Buddy went to the microphone. "Got a friend here tonight," Buddy said simply. "Gonna let him play one for you." He stepped back and sat on the amp at the side of the stage. His guitar, his Stratocaster, the instrument he'd played thousands of shows with, was now in Jimi Hendrix's hands. Jimi stood center stage. He didn't say anything. Didn't introduce himself. Didn't explain. He just adjusted the strap, checked the tuning with a couple of quiet notes, and looked down at the guitar like he was having a conversation only he could hear. Then he started to play. The first note was quiet. Almost hesitant. A single bent note that hung in the air like a question. The room went silent. Not the silence of boredom, the silence of attention. The second note was different. Longer. It seemed to expand, to fill the small club with something that hadn't been there moments before. Jimmy's left hand moved on the fretboard with a fluidity that didn't look practiced. It looked inevitable, like the notes were already there, and he was just revealing them. Buddy Guy sat on that amp and watched. His expression didn't change. But something in his posture shifted. A small settling, like a man accepting something he'd always known was coming. Jimi wasn't playing blues the way Buddy played blues. He wasn't playing rock. He wasn't playing anything that had a name yet. He was playing through Buddy's guitar, and the guitar was responding in ways Buddy had never heard from his own instrument. The song, if you could call it a song, didn't have a structure. It was more like a conversation between Jimi and the Stratocaster. Questions and answers. Silence and explosion. Moments where the notes came so fast they blurred together, and moments where a single note held for so long you forgot what had come before it. The audience didn't move. 60 people frozen, watching a young man in a fringe jacket make a guitar sound like it was crying and laughing and screaming and whispering all at once. Buddy Guy didn't move either. He sat on that amp with his hands resting on his knees, and he understood something that would take him years to articulate. This wasn't about technique. Jimi had technique, sure. But what was happening on that stage was something else entirely. It was possession. The guitar had chosen. In that quiet moment, Hendrix did something no one expected. The song reached what should have been its climax. The notes were building, layering, the small club's terrible PA system somehow holding together under the sonic weight Jimi was creating. The audience was leaning forward in their chairs. The musicians at the back tables had stopped drinking. And then Jimi stopped. Not a gentle fade. Not a resolution. He just stopped mid-phrase, his right hand lifting off the strings, letting the last note die in the amplifier's hum. The silence was crushing. Jimi stood there, breathing hard, the guitar hanging from his shoulder. He didn't look at the audience. He looked at Buddy Guy. Buddy looked back. Nobody spoke. The two guitarists held eye contact across the small stage, and something passed between them that didn't need words. An acknowledgement. A recognition. Slowly, Jimi lifted the guitar strap over his head. He held the Stratocaster carefully, almost ceremonially, and walked across the stage to where Buddy sat. He held out the guitar. Buddy didn't take it. "Keep it," Buddy said quietly. So quietly that only Jimi could hear. "For the next one." "What?" "You're not done," Buddy said. "That wasn't a song. That was a hello. Keep it. Play another." Jimi shook his head slightly. "This is yours, man. I can't." "I know it's mine," Buddy interrupted, still quiet, still calm. "And I'm telling you to keep playing it." The audience was starting to murmur, uncertain what was happening. But Buddy didn't look at them. He kept his eyes on Jimi. "One more," Buddy said. "All the way through this time." Jimi searched Buddy's face for something, permission, maybe, or understanding. Whatever he found, it was enough. He nodded once and turned back to center stage. The second song was different. Where the first had been a conversation, this was a statement. Jimi played with his eyes closed, his body moving with the music in ways that looked almost uncomfortable, like the sound was pulling him in directions his skeleton didn't want to go. The guitar screamed. It whispered. It did things that shouldn't have been possible with 6 strings and wood and wire. Jimi's fingers moved across the fretboard like he was typing a letter in a language that hadn't been invented yet. And Buddy Guy sat on that amp and watched himself become history. Not in a bitter way. Not with resentment. But with the calm recognition of someone watching the moment when everything changes. He could feel it happening in real time, the shift, the transfer, the passing of something intangible but absolutely real. When musicians talked about this night later, and they would, for decades, they would try to describe what Jimi did to that guitar. They would use words like revolutionary and unprecedented. They would talk about technique and innovation and the birth of a new sound. But Buddy Guy would always remember it differently. He would remember thinking, very clearly, sitting on that amp while Jimi made his Stratocaster speak in tongues, "This guitar doesn't belong to me anymore." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the meaning of this moment is still unfolding. The second song ended properly. A resolution, a final note that felt like a period at the end of a sentence. The audience erupted. Not polite applause, people were on their feet, shouting, some of them crying. The musicians at the back tables were shaking their heads, that particular gesture that means I just saw something I can't explain. Jimmy stood center stage with his eyes still closed, breathing hard, Buddy's guitar hanging from his shoulder. When he finally opened his eyes and turned around, Buddy was already standing, walking toward him. The audience was still roaring, but both men existed in a bubble of quiet. Jimmy lifted the guitar strap over his head again, held out the Stratocaster with both hands, offering it back. Buddy put his hands in his pockets. "That's yours now," Buddy said. "What?" "No. Man, I can't." "You already did." Buddy's voice was matter-of-fact. No ceremony. No drama. Just statement of fact. "That guitar, it made a choice tonight. I was just borrowing it all these years. It was waiting for you." Jimmy looked down at the instrument in his hands. "Buddy, this is your—" "No," Buddy said gently. "It's not. Not anymore. You showed me that. Both songs. Especially the first one, the one you stopped. You know why you stopped?" Jimmy shook his head. "Because you realized you were asking permission," Buddy said. "Playing careful. Playing my guitar the way you thought I wanted it played." "The second song?" "That was you playing your guitar the way it needed to be played." The small club was settling down now, the audience resuming their seats, ordering drinks, buzzing with the energy of what they'd witnessed. But on stage, the two guitarists stood in their own world. "I can't take your guitar," Jimmy said again, but his voice was weaker now. "You didn't take it. I gave it. There's a difference." Buddy pulled his hands from his pockets and clapped Jimmy once on the shoulder. "Besides, I got others. But you need this one. Trust me." Jimmy looked at the Stratocaster. His hands moved over it unconsciously, fingers finding positions on the fretboard like they'd been doing it for years. "What do I owe you?" he asked quietly. Buddy smiled. "Play it. That's all. Just keep playing it. And when someone younger than you makes it sound like something you never heard before." He paused. "You'll know what to do." What followed stayed with everyone in the room, long after the last note faded. Buddy Guy walked off that stage without his guitar. He left through the back door of the club, got in his car, and drove home to the south side. He didn't feel loss. He felt something closer to relief, the relief of putting down weight you didn't know you were carrying. Jimi Hendrix left that club with Buddy's Stratocaster. He would play it at Monterey. He would play it at Woodstock. He would play it on albums that would reshape what people thought a guitar could do. And he would never, not once, refer to it as Buddy's guitar. Because it wasn't. Not after that night. The 60 people in that club told the story for years. Some of them embellished it, added details that weren't there. But the core remained the same. The night Buddy Guy gave Jimi Hendrix his guitar and Jimmy played two songs that changed everything. Musicians heard the story and understood it as a parable. Not about generosity, though it was generous. Not about recognition, though it was that too. About something deeper. About knowing when you've been carrying something for someone else. About recognizing when the thing you treasured most was never really yours to begin with. Buddy Guy would go on to play for decades more. He would become a legend in his own right, acknowledged as one of the greatest blues guitarists who ever lived. He bought another Stratocaster the next week. Played it for 50 years. But he never once asked Jimmy for his guitar back. When people asked him about that night, and they did countless times, Buddy would smile and say the same thing. "That guitar was just passing through my hands. It was always his. I just didn't know it yet." Jimi Hendrix died 3 years later. The Stratocaster became part of music history, displayed in museums, written about in books, remembered as one of the instruments that changed everything. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. But the people who were in that small Chicago club in 1967 remembered something else. They remembered the look on Buddy Guy's face when he sat on that amp and watched himself become the past. They remembered how he stepped back without bitterness. How he gave away his most prized possession because he understood what real mastery was. Real mastery isn't holding on. It's knowing exactly when to let go.